I'm a practicing pagan witch that works in divination with clairsentience. I know things before they happen. I can also mentally see spirits, deities, demons. I work at the Mayflower Inn and Spa. One day my supervisor told me, "Hey, the library at Mayflower is a special room, but I want you to go in and check out. Afterwards, I want you to tell me what you think of it." While I'm in there, I see this Springer Spaniel dog, white with a brown nose and brown ears. I continue to walk around the room and get a feel of the place. I also mentally see an old man sitting in one of the chairs and just minding his own business reading his book. I can't remember if he had like a cigar or a drink or anything like that. But regardless, that part actually doesn't really matter. Once again, I see the brown and white dog laying at the old man's feet next to the fireplace, just enjoying being there with him. Once I'm done in the library, I walk out to the supervisor for us to have dinner. Later on that night, I tell her what I picked up for a sense of feeling in that place. She tells me that it is very common for guests to walk in there and see an old man with his dog in the library just reading, enjoying a book sitting by the fire nonchalant. She also confirms that this old man could either be the first headmaster, because this hotel used to be a school for boys, or it could be one of the boys that became a teacher. Both men have obviously passed away, so I picked up on the spirit of either one of these gentlemen with their dog without knowing who I was picking up for energy. She was able to confirm the fact that I was picking up on the old man, but we were never able to confirm what breed of dog it was. Again, the fact that it was a Springer Spaniel with white and brown patches. It was so prominent to me that I felt like it didn't even need someone to confirm that, to know that I was right about that. My next experience was the Vanderbilt Mansion. I want to preface this by saying I felt so on edge and unwelcome the whole time there. The only place I could say was worse was the witch house in Salem. There I felt someone trying to drag me down into the floor of the house. I also felt all the misery and pain that house was associated with. As for the Vanderbilt Mansion, I felt within the first 15 minutes of entering the building this sense of being watched. It was if someone was giving me the stink eye and the attitude of, "You don't belong here." The spirit was telling me, "This is my house and you need to leave." Fun fact, the house was built for the mistress of the man that paid for it. When I was alone in my room, I constantly caught glimpses of a shadow man out of the corner of my eye. Several times I thought someone was going to be either at the foot or side of my bed, waiting for me to set my feet down to grab them. Also, the room had a lot of sleeping space. Whenever I'd walk up or down the stairs, I was afraid that something was chasing me or was right behind me. When standing in the loft, looking down into the living room area on the first floor, I was fully expecting someone to be looking up at me because it did not feel that I was alone in that room. I could not wait to check out first thing in the morning. My social battery was so depleted, honestly, I'm surprised I didn't break down, but I think I would have if I spent another night in that room. Hi, I'm going to give some background before I get into detail. Currently, at the time of the story, I was 14 years old. This was my third creepy encounter I have experienced. The hotel we were at was in Scotland. It was my cousin's wedding party. Also, I have no mental or physical issues that would make me have any visions or anything like that. I'm a rational type of guy. I don't get too spooked either. I have a mind that would rationalize things. Now, on to the story. My parents and I are driving to this hotel for the after party. Once we arrived, we went directly to our hotel room to put everything in the room. I took my phone with me, of course. Then my family and I joined my extended family in the after party. I was with kids my age except for two younger cousins. We play and hung out throughout the party. I remember it got quite dark outside. My cousins and I were chatting about some game I was recently playing back home, when one of my cousins wanted to get something from their room. So, like any bored kids, we all decided to go up to his room. We got the keys to the room and headed up alone onto the second floor of the house. We took the elevator up and walked around to the side of the hotel his room was on. We passed a set of double doors with big grand windows that separated the hallway in the middle. Everything was great until we got to the room. Immediately, everyone felt that primal urge you feel when the hairs on the back of your neck raise up when you're scared. We hadn't even gone into the room yet. I turned to one of my cousins and said, "You gonna open the door?" My voice was weirdly calm, even though I was scared, because I was the oldest. I knew something was off. Everyone felt it, my cousin replied, taking the key from the youngest. Yeah, of course. She unlocked and opened the door. For a split second, as the gap in the door widened, I swear for the life of me, a shadowy figure with no features on its body was standing next to the bed. The way the room was set up, as you opened the door, the bathroom was on the left, and towards the right was the bedroom with two beds. The figure was in between the two beds. It disappeared once we fully opened the door. I held in my scream of shock, because I thought it was maybe a trick of the light or something unexplainable. For a second, we all stood there like idiots looking into the room. Then we all piled in as my cousin that wanted to go to the room grabbed the item he wanted. Immediately, we all ran out and locked the door. But that wasn't enough for us as we ran through the corridor, terrified of this thing that scared us so much. As we ran, I looked back to see and saw something peeking around the corner of the corridor as we passed through those doors again. I stopped just for a moment to look through the window on the door. To my surprise, there was the same figure. This time, it wasn't still. It was running for us, no features, but we felt its aura. If it had a face, it would probably be of nightmares. Of course, weren't idiots. We ran back to where our parents were and told them everything. They thought we were playing, and we continued with our night. At the end of the night, my parents and I walked back to our hotel room, but we had to pass the same room from before. The feeling of terror came back until I got into my hotel room with my parents. It was terrifying. Nothing else happened that night, but I know what I saw. That figure ran at us. We all felt its presence. Not sure what it was, but I won't ever forget this experience. In 2012, my father died at age 85. I had taken care of him for over 4 years. For the last year, he was getting increasingly senile and would wander off down the road late at night. I had to stay up to catch him some nights. The police found him several times to bring him back and contacted Senior Protective Services, who came to see me and said, "You should put him in an assisted living center, or else you will be going to prison for neglected." In other words, I was being blamed for him leaving late at night. After being up for 5 days, I passed out one night. He took off again and was eventually found wandering by the police again. So they put him in a nursing home which he shared room. This included 3 meals a day. He also had a nurse who would assist him to the bathroom. My father would pass away a couple months later. I would fall into a deep depression, and I got a room in a motel since I could no longer afford the apartment my father and I lived in. It was a very run-down motel, but it was haunted by a poltergeist. I was only there a week, and every night the ghost would turn off the lights and the TV over and over again. I would yell, "Stop!" and it would quit down for a minute or two, then start up again. It would move my mattress side to side or push it down as if someone was sitting on it. I once came out of the bathroom and saw the mattress breathing in and out, like if it had lungs. I could see the mattress rise and fall with every huge breath it took. I was completely scared out of my mind. I had to get out of that place. I had no friends in Portland. My father and I had lived there for 3 years, but I didn't get out much. Also, I didn't belong to any churches or clubs. Every day I spent getting my father's meals, cleaning up after him, and driving him to a bar and back. Being so lonely, I started visiting this Coyote Ugly type bar. I would attend a few times a week just to get out of the room and talk to someone. One night I decided to drive to the bar, but as I drove, I noticed there weren't any cars anywhere. It was 10 p.m. on a Saturday night, and I did not see a soul on that road. I remember getting this very strange feeling once I entered the parking lot of the bar. They had this very thick glass door that was super heavy. The dancers would have to grab the door with 2 hands to be able to open it. I'm a 220-pound man, and I found opening the door very difficult. In any case, this time I opened the door, it was as light as air. I was dumbfounded and totally surprised. I walked towards a chair I usually sat in when I visited. About 10 minutes later, several other dancers I did not recognize came out into the main room where I was at. They said, "Are you a ghost?" I said, "What?" They said, "Are you a ghost?" One dancer said, "Are you dead?" I felt insulted. I knew I was feeling a little sick, but not that sick. I said, No, can't you see me breathing? The dancer said, Are you dead? Again, but this time louder. I said, No. She said a third time, Are you dead? I said quietly, I don't know. I got tired of replying. Anyway, another dancer came over to sit by me. She said, You're glowing. That's when she started crying and getting very upset. She said, You're glowing! You're glowing! She began crying louder and louder until I put up my hand in frustration and said, Be quiet! She stopped immediately and ran away crying. I knew I probably didn't look my best, but I felt really insulted. Finally, another dancer came out to ask, Who are you? I told her my name, but she said again, No, who are you? I told her my name again. She said, Tell me who are you? So I sarcastically said, I'm not from here. I'm from another planet. The girls jumped up to run into the back room. At that point, another man ran into the club and looked at me. His eyes were bright and red. She told me that most of the girls of the night crew quit a few days ago because a ghost came in. They talked with him for a while, when one of them called for her boyfriend to come over and get her. But he was so scared he left once he entered the bar. They were so scared they all decided to quit. I still don't know what happened that night. The only thing I can think of is that I either visited a parallel dimension or I was in my astral body which glowed. I still don't know why I could not see any other cars on a Saturday night in Portland, Oregon. This happened to my wife and I about 20 years ago. When we got married, things were kind of tough, so instead of a European honeymoon like we wanted, we settled for a trip to Niagara Falls. We stayed at a hotel on the American side near the falls. The day after our wedding, we arrived at the airport, but had a layover in Chicago. The flight was overbooked, so they bumped us to a later flight, which meant that instead of arriving in the afternoon like we planned, we would arrive closer to 10 p.m. By the time we arrived in Buffalo, got our rental car and drove to it, he then ran back out. I sat there for another 20 minutes with no one coming out, until finally the manager came out and said, Sir, I'm sorry, but you have to leave now. I got up confused and drove home. It was about 15 miles away. Once again, I saw nobody on the road. There was no other car in sight. My haunted motel room was by 3 different freeways, and I still didn't see anyone. By this time, it was midnight, and once I got to the motel, I went straight to sleep. I wake up the next day thinking, wow, that was the most detailed real-life dream I've ever had. After a couple of days, I returned to the bar, and this time the freeways were filled with cars. As I parked, I started talking with one of the bartenders I knew. To our hotel, it was after midnight. We went straight to our room, so exhausted from the day. Our room was the honeymoon suite with the hot tub in the middle of the room. We never used it because we thought about the amount of people who made love inside it. Anyway, we got into our room, put our lounge away. My wife was so tired that she just passed out on the bed facing me and the rest of the room. I went to the restroom to wash up and set our toiletries in there. When I heard her talking to someone, I poked my head out of the bathroom and asked, Who are you talking to? She jumped up from the bed and said, Didn't you just sit on here? I said, No, I was in the bathroom the whole time. She said, I felt you walk over and to sit next to me. I just brushed it off and said, You were so tired maybe you fell asleep and dreamt it. She was firm about what she felt and said, No, I was just laying here when you walked over. After a few minutes, we both got up to put on our pajamas on. We were both so tired by now that we just went straight to bed. I woke up a few hours later to her shaking me violently. At first, I told her to go back to sleep, but she said, No, shut up. There is someone in the room. My wife is the type of person that has to sleep in complete darkness. I stumbled for the TV remote and turned on the TV. I got up, turned the lights on, looked around the bathroom and underneath the bed. I asked her what she saw or heard. She said a dark shadow came out of the bathroom and proceeded to walk over to her side of the bed. I was totally confused about the whole situation, but we would eventually fall back asleep, but I didn't find anyone. We fell back asleep, only this time with the TV on, but on mute. As soon as we fell back asleep, I heard noises in the bathroom again, but this time the footsteps were louder. I grabbed our umbrella and was ready to hit whoever was in that bathroom, but asleep and got up the next morning to tour the falls. The next night, we eventually fell asleep around midnight, only for us to be awakened by weird noises coming from the infamous bathroom. She grabbed my arm, and we both stood up looking in the darkness when we heard loud footsteps pacing around our room. I said hello out loud. That's when we felt someone sit at the edge of our bed. I jumped up like scared cat and turned on the lights as quickly as possible. Like the previous night, no one was there. Our door was locked shut. I checked the whole room again, but it was empty. The next morning, I went to the front desk to speak with the clerk about a noise complaint for our next-door neighbors. I explained they were a little loud the past couple nights. She asked me for our room number. She told me that we didn't have anyone next to us the past 2 nights. Our room was at the end of the hallway, so there was no one on the other side of us either. I was in total shock, but that night we decided to go to our room earlier than previous evenings. We ate some cheese, fruit, and crackers with a bottle of wine. As we got ready for bed, we decided to leave the TV on, double-checked the door locked, and made sure the bathroom door was closed. We fell asleep, but once again, we started hearing footsteps in our room. This time, instead of jumping up, we just sat there listening to make sure it was coming from our room. The footsteps were definitely in that room. It felt like it was right next to my side of the bed. We could hear it walking in a circle. I whispered to my wife, "That is not coming from next door." But just like the previous night, we both felt the bed go down, as if someone sat down. My wife yelled out, "Please leave us alone, we are on our honeymoon." At that moment, we felt the bed go up. We turned the mute off the TV and watched reruns of Friends until we fell asleep. The next morning, I get up and I asked my wife, "Did you go to the bathroom?" She said, "No, why would I leave the bed in the middle of the night with a ghost in our room?" I told her someone opened the bathroom door. That day we went back down to the lobby to ask them if we could switch rooms. The clerk asked us why. That's when my wife blurted out that the hotel room is haunted. I thought the lady was going to look at us like we were crazy, but she said calmly, "I can put you in room 402. She even offered to have our stuff moved for us. That night we got a good night's sleep without any disturbance to keep us up.